Welcome to Attic Raiders Retro Reviews, where today we're looking at a game that's been on my most wanted list for quite some time now. We're going to check out Creepy Cauldron. Released by MB Games in 1992, even though MB is a big games manufacturer, this thing is pretty rare. I don't know if it was ever actually released in the US or if this was a UK only thing, but there are not many of these, and when they do come up for sale, they are not cheap. Look at this. Anyone who's seen any of my other videos or knows about my tastes will see this is a game that I'm gonna love. It's spooky, it's monsters, it's sculpted minis, it's bright, it's colourful, it's so 90s. This is everything I want in a game. For a game like this, the box surprisingly features very little in the way of artwork. The only thing we've got is this picture here on the side. On the front cover, we've just got a photograph of the actual game, and on the back it's completely blank. But look at this thing. This is gonna sell it. It's a game for 2 to 4 players aged 6 years and up. It's a game of creature catching fun, although has to be said there's not really any catching involved in this, so this tagline is not quite accurate. But everything else seems to have a lot of thought and effort put into it. And just like my favourite board games, it's got a backstory.
Lured by a powerful force, you have been drawn into the great hall of an ancient castle, home of the evil witch Calmorda. There an ancient cauldron bubbles away, filled to the brim with a potion that sends up billowing clouds of acrid smoke. Peering out of its iron flanks are beady eyes. A crooked nose snorts and puffs, fanning the flames that lick its wrinkled jowls. The cauldron lives! Jammed in a gallery of broken teeth lies a key, cut from the bones of previous victims. To escape, you will have to reach inside the cauldron for the magic ingredients swimming inside its belly and cast a spell to release the key. Swooping overhead, you feel the chilling draft swept up by Calmorda's wake as her deafening, spine-chilling laugh echoes out of the darkness. Hurry! You haven't much time to make your escape.
With day-glow colours and rubber creepy crawlies, this is going to be a good one. Let's take a look. The game board features the Great Hall of the evil Calmorda's ancient castle, and this thing is a joy to behold. The detail on this is just stunning. I absolutely love this. The magenta, pink and lime green colour scheme on this is just fantastic. And there's some really, really nice details in around here. You've got the cells for each of the 4 players in the corners here. And then we've got the actual track that players have to go around in a clockwise direction. And of course, in the centre is where the Great Cauldron will sit, surrounded by these 4 loathsome frogs. We've got some really, really fantastic details on here, like the gargoyle water fountains and spell books, to the bones of other players who just haven't quite made it. Scrolls and this writing, which looks like something straight from the Necronomicon. We've got bats, bones and gold, and slime and ancient tomes and rats. And the forced perspective artwork on these cells is just wonderful. Each player in this game will have a token which represents a child that has been captured by the evil Calmorda and is trying to escape. And as you can see, just like everything else in this game, these are really, really nicely detailed with great definition and really sharp details. You can see that each of these children has obviously been imprisoned by Calmorda in her castle for a very long time. Their clothes are really, really ripped and raggedy, and they are on the run as fast as they can, looking back over their shoulder, really worried about that Calmorda that they can hear coming up and swooping around behind them. And each of these comes off of its base so that they can then turn invisible at some points in the game. This is one of the weakest points with this game, and you've got to be careful if you're buying this that these pegs have not snapped off of the bases, or in fact a lot of these are missing these bases as well. But these are really, really nice. It's a bit of an awkward angle with his neck. He almost looks like he's been possessed by the demon from The Exorcist or something, with the angle that head is at. But these are really nice, and they've put a lot of effort into these. Love them. In order to escape Calmorda's castle, you are going to have to collect different ingredients for your potion to then cast a spell to try to get the key. And this is where these items come in. These are the things that you are going to have to try to fish out of the Creepy Cauldron itself. And I absolutely love these. The colour choice on these is spectacular. I love this magenta that they have gone for, and the detail on these is absolutely superb. I love that these are this kind of squishy monster in my pocket type material. It's just absolutely great. These things look fantastic. Look at it. I love these things. They have put so much love and effort into them, and so that is why this is, in my opinion, one of the best looking games, or at least it's got the best looking components in it of any of the games that I've got. This is one of my absolute number ones, because they've put so much effort into the sculpt on these things. Unfortunately, because they have put a lot of effort into them, it means that children love playing with these things and stealing them out of the game in order to go and use them for their own imaginative play. And that means this game will be missing pieces quite often. And unfortunately, mine is also missing pieces. There is supposed to be one of each of these items here, but everything else there should be 3 of. So I'm missing a lizard and a bat. I really want to track down spares for this to get this complete, because I am a completionist and I just love these things. Now, oftentimes the box art on a game will far outstrip what is actually produced and what components you actually have available to you. And yet in this game, the representation, the miniature, although it's really not that mini, the Calmorda evil witch in this is so much better than the box artwork. As somebody who collects vintage toys and monster related things, I absolutely love this thing. She is scary looking. We've got a frog head, and this comes into play if you are captured by the Creepy Cauldron, and this can go onto a player's head to show that he has been frogified, and this is just such a fun little add-on. To move around the board, we have got a 6-sided dice, and it's got the numbers 1 to 4 for how many spaces you can move. It's also got a picture of a witch on it and a picture of a frog, and I will explain what those do later on in the video. And finally, we have the Creepy Cauldron itself. Look at this thing. This is gorgeous. Again, so much time and effort has been put into this sculpt and the detail on this thing. It just looks absolutely fantastic. I love this green slime that they've got oozing and bubbling out of the cauldron, and the bright green accents on the eyes and the key. It just goes so nicely with this deep red colour here. This thing looks amazing. It's so good, and I will come on to showing you later how this mechanism works. But just look at this. It is so cool. To set up the board, we have to first construct the cauldron, and this is a little bit of a pain because you do have to construct it at the start of every game, and you have to dismantle it in order to fit it back into the box. To start with, we take the front half and we slide this panel in here. This will help protect the mechanism inside. We then have to take the back half of the cauldron and we need to insert the top piece in here with this tab coming out through the hole here. Now this is one of the main problems with this game, is that there is an exposed spring here, and considering you have to take this apart and put it back together, this spring is always on show and it is going to end up getting damaged or lost. Once you've got this green piece in, you're then going to take the two halves and you're going to put them together. Now, when you put them together though, they have to get put together around this piece here, which will anchor it to the board. So we need to move them out of the way, and we need to place this piece through the bottom of the board first. Once you've got this mechanism for turning it in place, you can then put the rest of the cauldron together around it, because that has got to slide in, and this is the little bit that is fiddly, and you've got to really watch the pins on this that nothing breaks. But once it is together, it's in place, and that will now spin nicely without coming off. Once that's in place, then we are going to take the handle of the cauldron and we're going to move it down, stretching that spring, and connect it into place. This little green piece here will hold it in place as a stopper. Once that's done, you need to fill up the cauldron with all of those ingredients. You've got to get them all in there. So you've got all the bits of your spell that you're going to need in there ready, and then the key is going to go in its mouth, and that is it, ready for the game. The frog head goes onto one of these frogs around the plinth, and Calmorda goes onto the space marked here with the witch. Players find the cell that matches the colour of their playing piece, and they start off on the skull key square, and the game is now ready to begin. The first player rolls the dice and does what it shows on it. If they get 1 to 4 on the dice, they need to move that many spaces clockwise, and then do whatever is indicated by the symbol on the space that they land on. If you land on a green footprint square, you instantly turn invisible. Now this is of benefit because it means that you are safe from the evil witch Calmorda because she can't see you. But it also means that as you move around the board, you are not allowed to pick out potion ingredients if you land on a cauldron space. When you're invisible, you might not be able to pick any items out of the cauldron, but when you move through another player's cell space, you can steal one of their items. To turn visible again, you either need to land on another green footprint space, or the witch Calmorda must fly over your head. If you land on a cauldron space, you will then be able to try and get some of the ingredients for your spell out of the cauldron. Depending on what number the space has on it, you can either have 2 goes at getting things out or 1 go. You do not have to take 2 goes though if you don't want to chance it. When it's your go to try and get an ingredient, you have to turn the cauldron towards you and then place your hand in and try to feel around for one of those things that you need. It's quite easy just to take them out the top, but if you're looking for a particular ingredient given the symbol in your spell book, then it can be a little bit harder to try and get some of those ones, and you've got to try and get them out without setting off the cauldron. You then place your ingredient in your cell. Even if you pick something out the cauldron that you don't actually need for your spell, you can still keep it because that will mean that other players cannot complete their spell. However, if you're not careful when you're trying to get your ingredients, you might activate the cauldron. And if that happens, you immediately get frogified. And you do not want to be a frog, because that means you can't move at all until you turn back into a boy. To become defrogified, you have to wait until either somebody else sets off the cauldron and gets turned into a frog, or until you roll a frog on the dice. As you're moving around, if you roll a frog on the dice, it does absolutely nothing to you unless you already have a frog head on. If you roll a witch symbol, you've got to move Calmorda. Calmorda can only move on the cauldron spaces, and she will fly from wherever she is to the next available free cauldron space. When she does that, she may pass over the top of another player. If that player is invisible, they're safe from her, but they turn visible again. If the player is already visible, they get cast into the pit of eternal darkness. If you end up in the pit, then you miss one go. On your next turn, you will then roll the dice and move back onto the track to continue play. As soon as a player has collected the last magic ingredient that they need for their potion, they move straight back to the key space in their cell. On the next turn, that player is then going to turn the cauldron towards their cell and deliberately activate the mechanism. If no key appears in the handle's orb, then you've failed at that attempt to cast your spell, and you have to try again on your next turn. However, if the key does appear, then you have been successful in your spell. So you can take the key and place it over your piece's arm. You are now in the final stage of the game, where you have to move around the track one more time with the key and escape out at the padlock. But the game is far from over. As you're moving around the track, if Calmorda passes over your head, you have to drop the key and get sent to the pit of eternal darkness. Now, with the key lying there, any player who lands on that space or passes through it gets to steal that key. And other players can steal the key from you by landing on your space or just by passing you. And once another player's stolen the key, they can win the game themselves, even if they haven't managed to collect all of their potion ingredients. So I think you can tell I like this game a lot, but I promise not to keep going on about how great it looks. Instead, let's take a look at some of the problems with this game. Now, for me, one of the main things that's not great about this game is that it completely changes once somebody's cast their magic spell and has got a hold of the key. At that point, it doesn't matter whether anybody else in the game has got the ingredient. Given that you can just overtake somebody in order to steal the key from them, there is no more point in getting any more of those ingredients out of the cauldron. So it doesn't matter if you land on a cauldron space at this point. And also, being invisible is not really going to affect you very much. It's not going to stop you from taking things out of the cauldron because you're not going to be trying to take things out of the cauldron. The only place that being invisible is going to affect you is whether or not you get thrown in the pit if Calmorda goes over your head. The whole game changes to something entirely different once somebody has got that key. And it doesn't matter if you've put lots of effort into getting the ingredients to try and get your spell. All of that is out the window and you're just chasing after people. Now, some people might see that being a good thing because it means that even if you've been losing and way behind the whole way through the game, you can still win it and you can still overtake everything. But it kind of makes a mockery of everything that you've put into the game so far. But on the other hand, it also means that you can win this game even if you were doing really badly the whole way through. So it depends entirely on your view. It might be a good thing, it might be a bad thing. Some people really like that kind of game change in a game, but I'm not so sure. And then the other thing is the actual mechanism on the cauldron itself. It is really, really hard to set it off. Now, children might set it off when they're trying to take things out of the cauldron, but as adults playing this game, we went through an entire game with nobody setting off the cauldron at all. In order to actually set it off so that the handle springs up and traps you and turns you into a frog, you've got to be pretty clumsy. To improve this game, I think they really need to make that a little bit more of a hair trigger. The other problem is the orb on top of the handle, which is designed to randomly generate whether the key is showing there or not by spinning round each time it plays. Now, the problem with this is that when they've made it, the actual spindle inside the handle, the bit that turns that has the stickers on it, it's actually made from two sections. And these two sections are push fitted together. Now, when they're first pushed together and you insert them and set up the game, then it spins fine and it really has got a random mechanism. However, the more times that you set it off, the more it spins, and the jerking of that actually separates slightly those two halves. And when that happens, it pushes against the internal structure of the handle and it creates more friction and it actually stops it from turning. So it means unless you're going to pry apart the handle every time that you want to play this game, which is really, really faffy, then it's not actually going to change. It's going to be stuck on the same view all the time. And that completely defeats the point of that. So personally, when you get this game, I would recommend pressing those two pieces together as firmly as you can and gluing them in place so that they're not going to come apart. And that will greatly increase the usefulness of that mechanism and the enjoyability. So it's not without its flaws, this game, but overall, aesthetically, it's a win for me. The cauldron itself, is the kind of thing that I would actually have sitting on a shelf just for display. So for me, horror-themed game, creepy, spooky, this is so up my alley. It's a big recommendation from me. Until next time, this is Attic Raiders Retro Reviews.